August 7, 1942 began not with a roar, but with a vibration, felt more than heard, as the jungle floor of Guadalcanal shuddered beneath the boots of the first wave of United States Marines storming ashore at Lunga Point. The air was thick with humidity, the kind that pressed against the lungs and soaked uniforms within minutes. In the half-light of dawn, Imperial Japanese Army defenders prepared themselves calmly, confidently, for what doctrine told them would be another familiar encounter. Infantry against infantry. Rifle against rifle. Courage against courage. Private Taro Yamamoto tightened the straps of his pack and shifted his rifle across his chest. At 5 feet 3 inches and barely 118 pounds, he carried a load that weighed nearly half as much as his own body. 55 pounds of equipment, rifle, ammunition, bayonet, entrenching tool, mess kit, blanket roll, rations, hung from his shoulders and cut into muscle already strained by weeks of jungle duty. He told himself this was expected. Japanese soldiers were trained to endure. Pain was irrelevant. Strength came from discipline, not mass. Then the Americans came. Corporal Jack Harris stepped off the landing craft and onto the volcanic sand with a steady, practiced stride. At 5'9" and just over 150 pounds, he carried a similar combat load, but it rode differently on his frame. 38 pounds distributed across web gear designed to balance weight and preserve movement. His M1 Garand rested easily against his shoulder, American steel weighing just under 10 pounds, familiar and reassuring. Harris had trained for this moment in places far removed from jungle heat: Camp Lejeune, Camp Pendleton, running, marching, firing, repeating until the weight of his gear became an extension of his body. Across Guadalcanal, this contrast played out again and again. Marines averaging nearly 144 pounds advanced against Japanese soldiers who averaged closer to 116. The numbers alone seemed trivial on paper, but in combat they became undeniable. Japanese intelligence officers would later record something deeply unsettling: enemy infantry who could sprint under full load while their own men faltered after short bursts of movement. Men who carried the same tools of war, but did not seem equally burdened by them. At 0600 hours, the first gunshots cracked through the humid air. Harris moved inland with his squad, boots sinking slightly into the sand before finding purchase among roots and undergrowth. His web gear bounced, but never shifted enough to break his rhythm. When mortar rounds began falling nearby, the Marines did not hesitate. They sprinted 40 yards to cover in a single burst, breathing hard but controlled, rifle steady when they stopped. Yamamoto watched through his rifle sights, confusion tightening in his chest. This was not how infantry were supposed to move. Japanese doctrine favored stealth and surprise precisely because prolonged firefights exhausted smaller soldiers faster. Yet here were Americans advancing aggressively, absorbing heat, humidity, and weight without visible strain. By mid-morning, the disparity revealed itself in harsher ways. When Harris's platoon encountered a Japanese machine gun nest dug into coral, the fight collapsed into close-quarters chaos. The Browning automatic rifle barked violently as Harris's squad laid down fire. The weapon kicked hard, demanding strong shoulders and steady hands to control its recoil. Harris managed it instinctively, his larger frame absorbing the punishment shot after shot. Sergeant Hiroshi Tanaka, Yamamoto's platoon leader, recognized what was happening. He had seen it before in earlier campaigns. Reports from the Dutch East Indies had warned that American and Australian troops could fight longer, move faster, and endure more under jungle conditions. Japanese training emphasized spiritual endurance, mind over body, but American equipment and doctrine reflected something else entirely: a scientific understanding of human limits. Harris's boots, designed by manufacturers who supplied civilian hikers, gripped mud and root alike. His helmet weighed less than its Japanese counterpart. His gear placed ammunition where it could be reached without twisting or slowing movement. These were small details, but together they added up. As the day stretched into afternoon, Harris's platoon pushed nearly 800 yards through dense jungle in just 3 hours, arriving with enough energy to immediately establish firing positions. Yamamoto's company repositioned twice in the same period and arrived visibly exhausted. Some men leaned on each other. Others struggled to lift their packs back onto aching shoulders. The disparity became brutal during a sudden hand-to-hand clash near the airfield. Yamamoto found himself face-to-face with an American from Michigan, taller by half a foot and heavier by over 40 pounds. The Marine's bayonet strike carried momentum Yamamoto could barely deflect. When the American grabbed his rifle barrel, Yamamoto felt his strength fail, his grip slipping despite every ounce of will. And yet, the advantage was not absolute. Japanese soldiers were trained to fight smart when strength failed. Yamamoto used speed, angles, pressure points, techniques meant to neutralize size. Elsewhere along the line, smaller Japanese defenders ambushed Marines, striking from concealment and terrain they knew intimately. That night, Harris wrote in his diary that the Japanese tired quickly under load. Weeks later, Yamamoto would write home that the Americans seemed to possess endless stamina. Both men were right. 2 weeks later, Harris's company received new orders: advance inland toward Mount Austin. 8 days of rations. Extended patrol. Speed and mobility emphasized above all else. Harris loaded 42 pounds of gear, well within Marine guidelines. Yamamoto received similar orders, but his pack swelled to over 60 pounds, more than half his body weight. Doctrine demanded self-sufficiency. Endurance would see them through. The march proved otherwise. Harris's squad covered 12 miles in 8 hours, maintaining formation and readiness. Yamamoto's platoon took 11 hours, stopping repeatedly as men faltered. By the third rest halt, several soldiers needed help carrying their own gear. Pain burned through Yamamoto's shoulders and spine, the straps biting deeper with every step. When contact came near a stream crossing, the difference was immediate. Marines deployed smoothly, their automatic rifle hammering out suppressive fire while others maneuvered. Japanese gunners struggled to reposition their weapons, recoil throwing off aim as fatigue set in. The firefight lasted less than half an hour, but the outcome was decisive. By the fourth day, Harris's squad remained operational. Yamamoto's platoon was breaking down. Weight loss, stress injuries, and exhaustion slowed them to a crawl. Medical reports would later confirm what everyone already knew. Soldiers carrying more than 45% of their body weight simply could not sustain combat effectiveness. The war moved on. New islands. New battles. By September 1944, Harris, now a sergeant, stepped onto the coral beaches of Peleliu carrying a flamethrower. 66 pounds pressed down on his frame, still manageable. Yamamoto, now weighing barely 112 pounds, waited inside a labyrinth of caves he had helped carve from limestone. Japanese strategy had changed. Mobility no longer mattered. Endurance would be measured in weeks without food, not miles marched. Inside the caves, size mattered less. Knowledge mattered more. Harris's strength allowed him to haul his weapon through tight passages, but the terrain stripped away his advantages. Yamamoto's defenders fought from darkness, from angles the Americans could not anticipate. The battle dragged on. Days became weeks. Marines rotated out. Japanese did not. Yamamoto's weight fell to 106 pounds. Water turned foul. Ammunition dwindled. Yet resistance continued. The final counterattack came at night. Starving men carrying too much once again tried to move in open ground. Harris's squad cut them down with disciplined fire. The attack failed, but the lesson remained. Even overwhelming physical advantages could be blunted by preparation and resolve. When Peleliu finally fell, it had taken 73 days. Harris's company was shattered. Yamamoto did not survive. Years later, in a quiet hospital ward overlooking Pearl Harbor, Harris reflected on it all. The numbers still mattered. 30 pounds. 40 pounds. Load percentages and recoil energy. But they were only part of the story. Strength had helped him survive Guadalcanal. Logistics, doctrine, and innovation had carried him further. And at Peleliu, he learned the limits of physical advantage when faced with terrain, tactics, and an enemy willing to die where they stood. The war had been decided not by weight alone, but by systems, by who could feed their soldiers, heal them, move them, and adapt faster than the enemy. Size mattered. Endurance mattered. But victory belonged to those who understood how to turn human capability into sustained power. And on that humid morning in August 1942, when boots first struck the sand of Guadalcanal, the arithmetic of warfare had begun to reveal itself, one exhausted step, one measured stride at a time.